Hey guys, welcome back. This is Joel. This is going to be the second video in the Aruba SD branch series. In the first video, what we did was we did a quick introduction of the solution, and then we talked a bit about the topology, right? How to bring it up, what are the prerequisites, and so on. In this video, we will jump into bringing up the first branch gateway and doing some configurations on it, right? Let's switch to my screen here. Yeah, so this is the topology, right? Just to kind of reiterate, what we have done is this is going to be the branch gateway. So if I click on edit here, you will see the Kimo options, right, have been updated based on the instructions provided in the previous video. But just for closure, you can see the ISO files can be downloaded from your Aruba Central, right? So you can go to the network services under manual. You can see these are the 4 files which I have generated for this particular lab. But at any point of time, you can just delete it and regenerate as well if you want to do that, right? But for this series, these are going to be the 4 ISO files, at least as of now. I might delete it and create it again. So I have picked one of the device, I believe probably this one, right, the 607 serial number, and I have added it to this particular branch gateway which we are going to work on now. So if you see at the end of this particular Kimo options, you'll see 607 is mentioned, right? So all those ISO files were downloaded, uploaded to EVNG, and we'll have to point it in the Kimo options. Okay. That being said, what else do we have? We also have, so for now when this device comes up, right, we are trying to do something like a zero touch provisioning, right? We will not be doing any manual configuration on the branch gateway. Rather, when the device comes up, it will get an IP address from the DHCP server. So let me quickly show you the configurations on this guy, right? The ISP device. So show IP interface brief. So this is going to be the default gateway for the for that particular segment, for that particular LAN. And if you look at the DHCP server, so you'll find I have set up a DHCP server. This is going to be the default gateway and the DNS server, right? And this particular ISP router has internet connectivity, right? So I can ping 8.8.8, right? So that's the basic pre-configuration. Don't worry, I will try to give you all these configurations when I upload the whole lab to my repository on GitHub. Okay. So that being said, when we bring up this device, it will get an IP address. Once it gets an IP address, it will try talking to, right now we just have only one transport, which is the internet transport, because the MPLS transport is currently disabled. As you see, this particular emulator is disabled here. So, it will not get an IP address on the MPLS transport. We intend to do a static IP addressing on this interface, so we will do that later. For now, we are just concentrating on the internet interface. It's gonna get an IP address, and once it gets an IP address, it will try to talk to Aruba Central, right, via internet, right? That's what we intend to see. So let's go ahead and click on start, right? Meanwhile, let's come to Aruba Central, and we can go here to the list of devices, right, gateways, and you can see there are 4 devices, right? The serial number pertaining to the branch gateway is this guy, 607. Right now, all the devices are offline. You can see all the 4 devices are offline, and that is expected. Cool. Let's also observe what's happening. So let me just open up VNC. So this is the VNC console of the branch gateway. As you see, it has started doing something. It's trying to come up. While it is trying to come up, what we will do is we will do some minimal configurations on Aruba Central, right? Now the thing with the Aruba Central is that everything in Aruba Central you have to do, all configurations you have to do under what we call as groups, right? So here on the left hand side top corner, you can see these are the various groups. Right now there is a default group, but we will create a new group. Just if you are very new to Aruba Central, just remember that all the configurations goes inside what we call as group, and we can also create something called a site, but that's very much related to how you want to monitor a particular set of devices, right? So we will click on this gear icon, right now there is a default group. All the devices by default are added to this particular group, right? All the various serial numbers can be seen here. what we will do is we'll just click on plus, and we will go ahead and create our group, right? So we'll create a particular group here, right? So I'm gonna say bits branch, right? Bits dash branch. So that's going to be the group which we are interested in, and we are gonna select gateways here, right? So for this particular group, Central is asking me what are the type of devices which are going to be part of. Now you can actually have different types of devices in the same group, right? You can have access points, switches, and so on. In our case, since we have just gateways, we are just doing SD branch, we don't intend to put access points and switches, but ideally you can do that, right? You can have different types of devices, and you can kind of group all of them, and then in that particular group you can then go about configuring that group in accordance with how you want to design it, right? So yeah, that's that. And remember not to check this. We are basically not going to use templates. If you're using templates, then you'll have to check this. We are going to use UI groups, right? I'll explain what that is, but for now, next step is basically selecting and telling Aruba Central what type of devices are going to be part of this group. So I'm going to say Aruba OS is going to be 8. We are using the 8.x version. The role for the device is going to be branch, right? It's not going to be a VPNC. We'll do a VPNC later, but right now we are doing branch. I'm going to say add. So we have now created this group, right? What else can we do? Technically, since our device is probably not yet up, let's also maybe go and add the system IP, right? So if you want to do any further configuration in that group, you can just click on this gear icon, and that should open up the configuration of the group. So that's how configuration is structured in Aruba Central, right? It's very hierarchy based. Any group level configuration, you do it at the group level, right? So that all the devices in that group are gonna get it. If you have any device level configuration, you can again go to the specific device in their group and configure it as well. Now this is basically what we call as guided workflow, right? So guided workflows are again very simple ways, because Aruba, what they have done is they have created these workflows. So they know that if you want to bring up a branch, this is literally the whole philosophy between SD branch, right? If you want to bring up a branch, you need what? You need minimal the LAN and you need the WAN. So what they've done is they've created a workflow, right? You don't have to go about searching where the options on what to configure are. Rather, they will give you like a guided workflow, like how you install a software on your laptop, right? When you double click a particular software, it's going to give you those options, click next, click next. So in very similar to that, you have a guided workflow. But since we want to understand the configuration a little better way, I will not opt for this easy option. I will cancel this, and we will do one of the guided workflows later. But for now, I want us to get good at configuring or getting used to the Aruba Central configuration, right? So we'll try to do this in a more manual way, right? So basically, again, coming back, there are mainly 3 approaches of configuring devices in Aruba Central. One is your CLI based, that's template based configuration. You can create a template and then push the templates onto the devices. Second option is the guided workflow, which we just now saw, right? Which is probably the most easiest. And the third option is the UI groups, right? Whatever you see right now are the UI groups, right? So you basically see all the various configurations on the device can be are present in the tabs. Right now we are seeing the basic version. If you click on this advanced mode, right, it will give you the much more advanced options, which are again present for doing the same thing, which is configuring the gateway. Let's go back to the basic mode, right? And okay, so on the basic mode, one important configuration which we intend to do now is create what we call as a system IP. System IP is very much needed. It's a mandatory for devices, because it's the IP which is going to be used for communicating with external services, like proper communication with radios and all of that, if you have those services, right? And also proper communication with Aruba Central, right? So you need this system IP. Think of it as how you have router ID when you configure BGP or OSPF, right? Very similar to that. So system IP, click on system IP pool. So we are going to use a pool in this case. We can actually, you don't have to always configure a pool, but I want to show you that you can do a pool, right? So for this, also remember that we are configuring it at the group level. So at the group level, I'm going to go and put a pool, a start IP, and the end IP will be something like 201.150, right? So I'm giving a pool of IP addresses so that now the Aruba Central can automatically provide or provision an IP address from this pool to every single new gateway I'm going to add to this group. That's the whole idea. So I'm going to say save settings. Perfect. So there are a few more settings which I can technically do, but let's go and see what's happening. Okay, so this is gone. Great. Let's go and see what's happening here. So this is the device, right? The VNC of the device, the branch gateway. And you can see for now it's stopped here. Okay, not bad. What we'll do is let's go back to global, right? Let's click on devices. Let's click on gateway. And what do you see right now? Earlier we had 4 devices which were offline. Now you can see one of the devices online, right? Which means that that device has come up. The device which we just now brought up has come up and it has gone and connected to Aruba Central, right? So what we can do now is we can actually let me get into our ISP router just to show you, right? You can see the show IP DHCP binding and you can see 192.168.100.2 has been assigned. I think we should be able to ping this device as well. There you go. So we have connectivity. Perfect. All right. So since the device has come up, what we can do at this point is we can actually now go and let's see, where is that? Let's close this. So what we can technically do now is we can actually basically add this device to the group which we just now created. Correct. So what we can do is we can again go back to the gear icon here. And we are going to, right now the device is going to be in the default group. So I'm going to select the device and I'm going to click this option. And from there, I'm going to move the device to the new group which we created, which is bits branch. Okay. And I'm going to move. Right. So there you go. So the device has been moved. It takes sometimes, the UI doesn't refresh immediately. So for that, you can just go to some other tab and come back to the tab. And then you should be able to see the groups. And this time, okay, it's still not moved. So let's wait for a few seconds. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time for the move to happen. Perfect. Now you can see the move has happened. You can see the bits branch has the device, which is the branch gateway. Perfect. Now let's continue with our configuration, which is like the group level configuration. That's what we are trying to do, right? So let's come to, give me a second. Okay, so let's go to the left hand side, click on the group, and for doing any configuration you have to click on devices and then see you have an option here called config. So I'm going to click on config and there you go, you're back to the configuration section, right? So let's continue. We did the system IP. Now let's do time. Right, so very important is to put a FQDN for the NTP. So we will come to time and hit the plus button, and over here we can put an IP address. I already have it handy here, so I'm going to copy it from my notes. So we are using 64. It's a global NTP IP is what we are going to use for this one. Let's make sure we have the burst mode enabled, right? And the time zone will be, I'm from India, so I'm gonna see if I have Kolkata here. There you go, my time zone is available. So I'm gonna again hit save settings. Always make sure when you configure, hit the save settings button. Next is we have the DNS tab. So when you click on DNS, we will go with we can either do learn DNS server or we can do specify DNS servers, right? So in my case, I'm going to do specify DNS servers, right? And then, we'll probably have, let's click on plus here. Okay. And we will basically use user defined, or we can actually use, in fact, we'll use Google, right? I don't plan to have some internal host names which needs resolution. So I think I'm good to kind of use the default Google's DNS servers, which is fine. So I'm going to click save. Okay, next option is the management. So remember, you're getting this prompt for username password. Right now looks like the device is rebooting again, right? But that's fine. When it reboots, once it comes back up, it will again fetch the new configurations which we have done. That's something which happens. I think the first time the device gets some initial configuration like the system IP, it goes and does a reboot. But it shouldn't be a problem for us. So we will come back and continue with our configuration. So we are doing the configuration of the management user, which is the admin user, right? So management, again, we are doing this. Remember, we are doing this at the group level. Because we are doing it at the group level, the same credentials will be pushed for or will be used for any devices in this group. So management user, right? So for management user, what we'll do is we'll make sure that the AAA authentication is disabled. We are not using like Radius and TechAxe. We will use local management user, right? Username is going to be admin, and password maybe you can use Aruba123. You can use any password. Since this is something I'm doing in a lab, I want to make sure I use a simple password so that I can remember it, right? And the role, let's make sure I use the super user role, right? That way you can access everything using this credentials. So I'm going to hit the save, right? Perfect. Save settings. Once again, we gotta hit the save settings. Next, let's continue. We are done with the system part. Let's come to the LAN. So in the LAN, right? So in the LAN, what we try to do is we will now, if you look at the topology again, right? So we are here, right? BG gateway 1. This is the LAN side, correct? So we intend to put all the gateways on the BGW. When I say gateway, I mean the SVIs, right? So all the clients which are coming here from the left hand side will need a DHCP server also, right? So for all these VLANs, we want the BGW to be the DHCP server, right? So that's why we will go and enable this one. We'll say IP DHCP server. Perfect. Now next, what we need is we need to create the uplink VLANs, right? Which are the uplink VLANs? These are the two VLANs. One is the 4094, other one is the 3000, right? Those are the VLANs in which these ports will be put in, right? So for this particular port, my bad, this port and this port will be in 4094, whereas these two ports will be, or these two interfaces will be in 3000, right? And 4094, yeah, that's a default VLAN which Aruba, edge device uses when it comes online. So we will continue using that, right? So what we'll do here is we'll have to click on plus here, right? Let's put the VLANs. So for starting, we'll start with maybe the MPLS VLAN. We'll use a name. VLAN number is 3000, right? And let's hit the save button. Similarly, let's add the other VLAN, which is 4094 automatically comes, so you don't have to create it. Whereas 3000 is something which we created. In addition, let's also create these VLANs 5, 6, 7, 8, right? The VLANs which are on the LAN side. So for that, again, I have my notes here, so it's easier to kind of fetch it from there. So VLAN ID will be 5. Addressing mode, right? So we will we want this guy to actually act as a DHCP server. So I'll say act as a DHCP server. Perfect. So I've enabled DHCP server. So I will need to, which means I will now need to provide the subnet, which is 10.100.5.0. That's what we are using from the topology. The mask is going to be /24. Gateway is going to be 5.1, which is actually going to be the VRRP IP of this particular gateway, this BGW in fact. Then what else? DNS server, we can actually use either public DNS server or you can use user defined. In fact, I think we will probably use public DNS server. It's fine, right? So we'll use Google here. Yeah, because we don't have a DNS server in our topology, so I'm using the Google one. Perfect. So that's going to be all we need here. So I'm going to hit the save button. Right, now we need to do the exact same thing for the 3 more VLANs, which is 6, 7, 8. Let me pause the video and do it myself so that I don't bore you guys. Perfect. So I have added 5, 6, 7, 8, the rest of the VLANs which we need, right? I'm going to hit the save button. Apart from this, we also actually need one more VLAN, right? We will call that VLAN as the peering VLAN for now, but it is actually needed for when we do uplink redundancy and all of that later, right? So, but since we are creating the VLANs now, let me actually go and create that VLAN as well. Just like how we created the VLAN 3000, we'll just create the peering VLAN, which is probably we'll use 200 for this one. Okay, so once this is done, okay, it took some time, it gave some error. Let me check what the error is. Give me a second. Okay, so that was actually a very weird issue, and the only way I could fix it was I moved the device which we had already moved to the bits branch. I moved it back to the default group. As you see now, maybe we can verify it. You can see I've moved the device from bits to the default group for now, and then it allowed me to actually do the configurations which we intended to do, right? So I'm not sure if it's like some type of a bug or so, but anyway, once I did that, I was able to basically create the VLANs which we intended to do. Let me maybe show you one of these guys. As you see here, it has all the configurations. Maybe one more. There you go. So I was able to do that, and maybe I will add the device back now. I think we'll probably add the device back now and see if that works. So hold on, let's do that. So let's go to groups, select the device, and we're gonna move the guy back to bits branch. Okay, so I think that went through. Let's check. Things are looking fine on the device. What about here? Okay, I don't see the device yet. We'll have to probably wait for a few seconds. There you go. Okay, so device has moved and this looks stable. So I think, yeah, it was probably a way to get around it. So if you guys hit the same issue, I would suggest you to do that. Move the device from the respective group to default, do your configurations, and then you can move it back. Perfect. Let's go back to our group now, continue with the configurations. So we did the LAN part. Remember, we still need to add one more VLAN. So we need to add the peering VLAN. I hope we don't hit the issue again, but fingers crossed. Right, so I'm gonna add this. So that's going to be the peering VLAN. Why we need it? Because we will be doing some kind of redundancy, uplink redundancy later. So for that we need it. We are just adding it for now and we'll just keep it. Okay, so no errors, great, looks good. So we were able to add all the VLANs which we need. Now let's go to the LAN ports, right? So on the LAN ports, we need to be careful here, right? So if you look at the ports here, the gigabit 0/0/1 is the LAN port. So let's this is the LAN port, and the rest of the two are like the transport ports, right? Ports towards the uplink. They're called uplink ports, whereas 001 is the LAN port as per our topology. So let's go back, and I'm going to add the plus icon here, right? We can give it a name. I'm going to say maybe like branch internet, change this to 001, right? Let's use trunk interface, because we have different VLANs behind it, right? 5, 6, 7, 8. So let's use trunk. The native VLAN, let's use 5. Remember, we have created a management VLAN. Let's use 5 as the native VLAN for the trunk. Whenever you create a trunk port, you need to have a native VLAN, right? So let's do that. And then we also need to mention the VLANs which are allowed. So remember, we have 5 to 8, and then we also have one more VLAN which is 200. So let's use this format, hit the save button, and then hit the save settings. Perfect, things are looking good, right? This went through. Next, now let's go to the advanced modes, because now we want to do some configurations which are not in the basic mode. So we need to go to the advanced mode. Now when you go to the advanced mode, what do you see is there are some extra panels showing up, right? One thing is maybe we can go to system and switching, and we can disable spanning tree, right? Because we've got a topology where we know that there is not going to be any spanning tree, but because we have this bridge hub type of devices, I don't want it to kind of put the particular port in disabled state. We don't have any loops as such, so these are all going to be L3 ports, so we are good with respect to that. So I think we are good to kind of disable the spanning tree here. But in production, obviously make sure that you don't do it unless you are very sure that you're not going to have any loops. Okay. What else? Okay. So yeah, again, just to double click, right? Disabling spanning tree is not something which you should do in production environment. The reason we are doing it here is because I don't want these two ports to be locked, because of incompatibility of spanning tree, and these are anyway uplink ports, right? So I don't expect it to have any loops, but especially on the LAN side, you should not disable spanning tree. I know we did it now at the group level, but again, in my case, I don't think we have a loop, so we should be good. But if you, especially in the production environment, make sure that you don't disable spanning tree, especially on the LAN side, that too, right? Perfect. Coming back, so we've got the spanning tree thing done. Now what else do we have? So let's do a little bit on the VLAN security part. So if you go to the security section here, right, so you have there is a section here called as apply policy, right? And as you see, let's click on the port which is 001, which is the trunk port which you just now configured, and you can see here we need to by default you can see that port is untrusted, right? Which means the traffic will not pass through unless there is some authentication happening per VLAN. So what we'll do is we'll make it trusted for now, right? So we'll say that, look, on this particular port, we want all the traffic from these VLANs to be trusted. So I'm going to click on trusted here, and I'm going to hit the save settings. We'll actually make this untrusted later when we do certain labs, but for now we want maximum what we're going to do is we're going to generate some ping traffic, right? So I want all my VLANs to be trusted so that we don't do .1x map type of authentication on these VLANs. So that's why I have moved it to trusted. Okay, so that completes all the group level. Now let's do the device level configuration. How do you do the device level? You have to click on this list button. So once you click on the list button, you get like the device. So you can click on the device, right? The device which has gone and signed up or which has gone and connected to central. And we will click on here again, we need to click on device. Perfect. And again, it is going to give you the guided workflow. We don't want the guided workflow. Like I mentioned earlier, I want to do this in a more robust way so that we get all the experience which we need, right? So I'm going to cancel the guided workflow. And let's attempt to do this with the UI group configuration, right? So starting with host name. So host name, I want to maybe go with something like BGW1 will be the host name, right? The username password is actually getting inherited from the configuration which we already did at the group level. So that's what you see here. Okay, we can hit the save button. Always make sure whenever you do a configuration, hit the save button. Okay, so we're done with that. Next would be, so we have the host name running, right? Now next is we'll do a bit of the underlay configuration, right? So for that we will again go back to the we'll actually go back to the group level. So you can go back to the group level by just clicking that arrow button which I just now did, right? And from here let's click on again devices. Okay, and from there click on the config. Actually wait, now that I think of it, I think let's do the device level again. Let's click on BGW1 because I think it's better to do the underlay right from the device. So I'm gonna go back to what we were doing earlier. We are on the BGW1. This is the device level configuration, and we'll click on we are in the advanced mode already. Great, right? So we're already in the advanced mode. Let's go to interfaces. So on the interfaces, what do we see here? Yeah, on the interfaces, remember we talked about the VLAN 4094. That's the VLAN for the internet transport, right? And I said that 4094 is the VLAN used by default, right? So what we'll do is we'll enable DHCP on it. In fact, it's already enabled on the device. That's how the box actually comes up. But we will actually configure it as well, right? We will explicitly configure it. In case that configuration goes off after a reboot or something, right? So what we'll do is here, we are on the interface. Let's go to VLANs. So on the VLANs, you see you have different VLANs. This is the 4094. So I'm going to click on that guy. And here bottom you can see 4094, correct? There you go. So we have that. And what do we do here is we are going to enable routing, DHCP. Like I said, it's already enabled, right? Because this comes by default. NAT, let's enable NAT. That's one thing which I wanted to do. NAT is because what we want is every time the traffic, from the LAN side comes to the WAN side, I want all the traffic to be NATed out here. So right now you see the IP address which our 000 has received is 192.168.100.2, right? Let's look at our DHCP binding. I forgot what was the IP. I think it was, yeah, it was 192.168.100.2. So I want all my traffic to be NATed to it. That's why I'm going to enable NAT on the outside, like I've mentioned here. Then also make sure that admin state is checked, this thing, and we are gonna hit the save button. You get this alert, but that's fine. We can click OK. Just make sure that the NAT is enabled. Has it been enabled? Yeah, it has been enabled. So that being said, what else we do is, okay, now let's return to the group level configuration. So let's go to the group level configuration, right? Again, the same, let's click on the config button here. Let's go to interface. Let's click on ports, right? And remember, right now we see only one port, which is the LAN port. Remember, we need to add two more ports. Which are the two more ports? 000 and 002. Those are the two more ports which needs to be added. Let's add them. Let's click on plus button. First, let's add, okay, so here you go, 00 and 002. We have added those. I'm going to hit the save button. Okay, so once we have added those ports, so we have added this port to the group level. Now we will go to the device level and configure the ports, right? So we will again go back to the device level. How do you go to the device level? Click on list, gateway 1, device, and last step is your, now we are on the configuration of device configuration. We'll go to interface, we'll click on ports. Perfect. Now first is, let's do the MPLS port. The MPLS port is your gigabit 002. Let's click on that guy. As you see here, we need to change the type. It's not a LAN port, it's a WAN port, correct? I'm going to select WAN, and we will make sure that port is trusted. Yes, it is trusted. What else? Speed and all of that, let's keep it as usual. You'll normally find an ACL on that port. I don't like having an ACL, because if you have an ACL, then you can't do all your ping test and stuff. So I'm going to remove the ACL, but in production, make sure that you don't remove it, because this is an ACL which is basically on the uplink ports. You're basically preventing any specific kind of DDoS type of traffic coming in, right? So don't disable it in production, but in my case I want to allow everything so that I can do some ping test and checks, right, and show it to you guys. Okay, continuing. So the mode is obviously access, right? VLAN is important, but which is the VLAN for the MPLS side? We know the VLAN which we are using is 3000. So we want 3000 to be the VLAN for those ports, right? We can also give a description here, which is much easier for us to understand. I'm going to call this as a MPLS uplink. I'm going to hit the save button. Port VLAN configuration should not be modified, blah blah. I'm going to say yes, that's fine. Ideally, that's the thing, right? So we ideally we are supposed to use your virtual gateways as VPNCs. But since we are doing all these things, we are trying to use it as a branch gateway. You're gonna get some of those alerts, but don't worry, things are gonna work, right? Now we'll do the same thing for, we did the MPLS port, we'll do for the internet port. Okay. For the internet port, again, the idea is pretty same. We'll just change this to WAN. We'll keep this in admin up, rest everything is fine. Remove this ACL, which I don't want. I'm gonna allow everything for now. Port is gonna be access. VLAN is on 4094. Let's put in a description, and I'm gonna give the description as this guy. Okay, so that looks good. Now next is let's go back to the topology, right? So we did some configurations on the uplink side. Now let's concentrate a little bit on the LAN side. So on the LAN side, remember we have configured VRRP at the group level, but whenever you configure VRRP, what do you have? You have you need an IP address on the two redundant devices, and then you need a virtual IP. We've already configured the virtual IP in the VLAN configuration of the group. What we'll do now is we'll put those individual IPs on the devices, right? So where would you do that? Obviously device level. I can move back to basic mode now because I have all the options which I need for my VLANs over here, right? So let's continue. You can see here you already have those VLANs which we configured at the group level, getting inherited here. All we will do is we'll start putting the IP address, right? So let's go to 5, right? And here let's put the IP address as, so this was the virtual IP. So I'm going to use 5.2 will be the IP on this particular gateway. On the other gateway, we'll probably use 5.3 later. Okay. The mask is going to be something like this. Perfect. And let's do the same thing for all the other guys. For 6, I'm going to use 6.2. And what else do we have? We have 7 as well, right? We have 7. So let's put 7.2 and this one. I think we also have 8. For 8, it is going to be okay. And we also have the peering VLAN, remember? So that's going to be 200. So for that, we're going to use that guy. And the subnet mask is going to be obviously 255. So we'll not be running VRRP on this peering VLAN. That's why I'm just explicitly putting .1 on this particular gateway. We'll use .2 on the other gateway. Similar will be the case for VLAN 3000. So this is going to be the IP address for what? VLAN 3000 is the MPLS VLAN for us. So you put an IP address on this, it basically means that that's the IP which you have received from your MPLS provider, right? So we are using that, right? Perfect. So just to kind of double click here, 5, 6, 7, 8, these are the VLANs on which we will be running VRRP, whereas 200 and 3000, we are not running VRRP, we are using them as SVIs, right? We are basically putting a single IP which is .1 and .100 on them for the functionality to work. Okay, so we're gonna hit the save button here. So let that get saved, 1 sec. Okay, so we have done some of that configurations. Now let's log into the CLI of the branch gateway, right? And confirm some of the things which we did, right? Now, ideally, the problem with EVNG is that all these devices by default they'll give you VNC, right? You can only VNC into it. That's how we were doing VNC, but I hate using VNC. I mean VNC, I hate VNC because you can't do copy paste on it, right? You can technically log in, like for example I can log in with admin and Aruba 123. Remember the username password we created? There you go, we can log in, right? But when you have to run big commands, copy paste, things are not going to work. So what I have done is I have created static NAT over here, right? Like more like a port forwarding configuration. You don't have to worry too much. If this is much of an hassle, you can continue using the VNC, right? Just like login, put the username password just like how I did and continue using it. I'm not a huge fan of it, so I've done port forwarding. So let me try to SSH, into the box through my port forwarding mechanism, right? So I'm going to do that. Let's see, I think I have a entry created here. There you go. Yeah. So I'm inside the device now, the BG gateway one. Let's check the interfaces. Show IP interface brief. As you see, all the interfaces, the 5, 6, 7, 8, the VLANs which we created are up, right? You have the VLAN 200, 3000 as well, and the VLAN 4094 which has received the IP through DHCP which we have set up, right? A few other checks is you have some very interesting command. You can run show Aruba Central details, and this will tell you if your device is talking to Aruba Central, right? And you can see here connection status is up. Okay. You can also check the control plane, right? The control channel is up by running the command show Aruba Central control channel, and there you go. You can see even that is ready and that's up. Okay. So always make sure that, you know, if you look at my control channel, it's going to be this one. It might be different for you guys. You know, it depends on which zone your Aruba Central is hosted and provisioned and all of that. But yeah, these are some of the things which you can verify by logging into the CLI. Okay. Now the last thing we want to do here is, create VRRP. Remember we talked about VRRP. The reason why we want VRRP is, you see there is a client here, right? And ultimately our final design will involve 2 gateways, right? So when you have 2 gateways, we want to have an active standby VRRP setup here, right? Otherwise, what's the point of the second gateway, right? So we have already configured the virtual IP at the group level, right? The .1 IPs for VLAN 5678. We have also configured the individual IPs for the branch gateway, the .2s, right? All we need to do is enable VRRP now. So let's go and do that. We'll have to do this at the device level, right? So there you go. So we are at the device level. I think we should be on the advanced mode. And from the advanced mode, let's go to, I think, high availability over here. Right, so we are in the high availability section, and here you can see we have an option to create our VRRP, right? So we will basically go and add the entry. So we're going to click the plus button here. Okay, so we'll click the plus button and start with the ID number, say 5. Right, so for each VLAN we are creating a VRRP instance, right? So ID number 5, description you can skip. Let's put an IP address which is the virtual IP which we created earlier. Priority, let's give a priority of 200 for this guy, and router preemption we are going to enable. Okay, preemption delay is going to be 60 seconds, and admin state is maybe up. Okay, the VLAN is going to be 5. Okay, that's the VLAN. So we're going to repeat the same thing for, hit the save button, right? So let's see if this went through. Yes, it went through, as you see here. I'll hit the pause here and go and repeat the same thing for the rest of the 3 VLANs. All right, perfect. So as you see, all the 5, 6, 7, 8, all the 4 VLANs are up. I've added the VRRP IP address, created the 4 instances for VRRP, right? Because we have 4 VLANs, so you have to create a VRRP per VLAN. Since we configured it, we have hit the save button. Let's go and double check if on the CLI as well, if we see it, right? So you can use the CLI called show VRRP, and there you go, right? So configuration has gone in. It shows that it is the master. Currently it shows as backup for these 2 devices, but that will change. That should change soon. There you go. It's already, the 3rd one is already changed. Maybe the 4th one will also change soon, but that's just the initial state. Once the election and all of that is done, you know, it should change to master, right? The last one as well. But yeah, I think that's mainly, let's probably wait for a couple of seconds, I guess, for this to. Perfect. Yeah, that was a bit annoying, but you know, it has changed as well. So all the 4 VLANs which we created, VRRP is up, and this particular box is going to be the master for all the VLANs. So that's everything which I wanted to cover in this video, right? Just to recap, if you go back to the topology, right? What we did was we actually, let's actually look at what's happening on here, right? You can see the host name changes and all of that. Let's probably go to, Let's actually go to global now and click on devices, gateway, and out of the 4 gateways, you can see one of the gateways is up, right? And all the details are showing here, right? The system IP address is shown here, the serial number is shown. You can also see a few other things if you want, like you can see the firmware version 8.7 and all of that information, right? But if you go back to the topology, what we really did was we brought this box up using zero touch provisioning technically, right? It got an IP address, it got DNS server IP, and then it was able to talk to Aruba Central. On the Aruba Central, we created a group and started putting some generic configurations like NTP, host name, system IP, and all of that. And then we created all the IP addressing, right, which is all the VLANs which are needed, and we brought up the transport links, which is 00 and 002. We also brought up the LAN link, right? We made this into a trunk. We created the VLANs, which we expect to be present in our LAN. We created the SVIs on the branch gateway. Finally, we also made sure that we enabled VRRP so that when the second box comes up, both the devices can work in an active standby fashion. Perfect. So that was everything which I wanted to kind of cover in this one. Hope you guys liked it. Again, this was the second video in the series. Go back and check the first video because that has some initial understanding about how the solution works and how to bring up the lab. Yeah, I think that concludes the second video. Do come back because in the next video we'll try to explore how to get a VPNC up. All right, have a good day. Bye bye.